Well, howdy there, all you internet people. We're having a little bit of a technical issue. The other microphone's not working or not on right now, so we'll start over here, and maybe just for variety, we'll go over there when it's ready. We were talking about Birkat HaMazon, and it's my contention that Birkat HaMazon outlines an ideal life for a Jewish person. Yeah, this switch isn't on. Okay. There we go. Well, now I'm back at my regular place. Could you tell it's different? So we're talking about Birkat HaMazon. So find it in your Siddur. Whatever Siddur I'm using, I usually look at the 340. 337. Yeah. So we're going to have to really pick this up after the holidays, but so just a little bit about this. Before you say Birkat HaMazon, it's usually preceded by a psalm. During the week, it's Psalm 137, and during Shabbat and holidays, it's Psalm 126. Is that what it is? Yeah. We'll take a quick look. Wait a minute here. Yeah, 337. Yeah, Shir Malot, Psalm 126 is what most of us are used to hearing. And we're not used to hearing Psalm 137. We're used to hearing it on Tisha B'Av. There's a trend in Jewish prayer to mention, if not emphasize, the fact that we're in constant mourning for the temple. But it doesn't come out really until, like I said, all the fasts leading up to Tisha B'Av, and Tisha B'Av itself, which basically is a period of mourning the loss of our, not just the temple, but national identity. I'm not going to go into a whole lecture on what Tisha B'Av means. Next year, we'll look at that. But so the one we're used to seeing is a song of it's an upbeat sort of thing. Shir Malot, the Malot, the song of the steps, really. And it's one of those that was said by the Levites as the Kohanim would ascend the steps to the temple. And it's talking about after we got back from Babylon and back into the land of Israel. We were allowed to get there. Anybody historically know who was in charge at that time? This is Babylon conquered Judea. About 50 years later, Persia conquered Babylon, and Cyrus of Persia allowed the Jews to return, the ones that had been forcibly taken, but most of them did not want to go, for the same reason that you are not moving to Israel tomorrow. You have a comfortable life where you are, and you have family, friends, a life, a rhythm, and most people don't want to give that up unless they're in danger. Well, we see a lot of that in the news today. People trying to get out of a place because they think it's going to be bad, and it probably will be, like Afghanistan or in Central America, where the conditions are so bad people want to leave their home. By and large, people don't want to leave their homes. But the one we say on Shabbat, Psalm 126, is one of returning. And here, let's take a look at the translation, because when we come across a Hebrew word that's relevant, we will, emphasize it. But when God restored our exiles to Zion, so when God brought us back from Babylon, it was like a dream. Hayinu kecholmim. We were like dreamers. Then our mouths were filled with laughter, a joyous song was on our tongue, and then it was said among the nations that God has done great things for them. I don't know what literature they're talking about. There is not a large body of work out there of people saying, oh, look at that, the Jews are going back to the promised land. They've been given it by God. Look at what a special people. Nobody was talking about this. So I'm not sure if that's an actual reality or just something. Well, they ought to say that because, we're coming back to a place where we were exiled from. But maybe not. And then it was said by the nations, said among them, the Lord has done great things for them. The Lord did do great things for us, and we rejoice. Bring back our exiles and bring back the rest of us. We're thrilled to be here, but we really don't feel complete. There's still a lot of us left over in Babylon. Babylon became the center of Jewish learning. Even after the Jews were allowed to return, Babylon went on to become, there were two Talmuds. One was in Palestine, what was then called Palestine. What was now called Palestine was pretty much what was then called Palestine, but it's different now. And, let's see, like streams in a dry land, may those who sowed in tears reap in joy. There's a Debbie Friedman song, sow in tears and reap in joy. I think it's Debbie Friedman. At any rate, the Orange Jews did a version of it. May one who goes out weeping, carrying a bag of seed, come back with songs of joy, carrying his sheaths. And in our translation, in the Sim Shalom, bring back our exiles, God, like streams returning in the Negev. Like those who sow in tears shall reap in joyous song. The seed bearer may plant in tears, but will come home singing, carrying ample sheaths of grain. When I was a kid, we used to make fun of the Salvation Army people at Christmas time, ringing their bells, and they had those little red pots that you put money in and things. And they're saying, bringing in the sheaves, bringing in the sheaves. We shall come rejoicing, bringing in the sheaves. That's this psalm. That's what it's from. This is what they're doing. Now, on weekdays, it used to be the custom, and it's still the custom in more observant circles, to say the psalm about when we were just getting to Babylon. By the rivers of Babylon we sat and wept as we remembered Zion. Again, we usually just see this on Tisha B'Av. And there on the willow trees we hung up our harps and our instruments, for there our captors asked us for songs, and our tormentors for amusement said, sing us one of those Zion songs. Come on, Jew, entertain us. It was not happy. But that's what you said every day, 3 times a day, or twice a day, after you ate. Shabbat Shalom. Like I said, we had a love affair with the tsuris. We had this connection with the suffering. And that's to put it, that's one of the things that gave rise to Professor Salo Baron, who warned against Jews looking at their history and saying it was the lachrymose history of the Jews. Lachrymose means tear-filled. And he said, he warned against looking at our history like that, because will not get you in the good mood to go forward. It won't do what it needs to do in order to make you appreciate the joyous aspects of our traditions and our customs and the way we look at the world and how we focus on what's here in the world and not what's after, because we don't know. But this is one of those things that, remember, Lord, what the Edomites did on the day Jerusalem fell. They said, tear it down to its very foundations. Daughter of Babylon, doomed to destruction. Happy is the one who repays you for what you have done to us, who seizes your infants and dashes them against the rocks. I mean, it's a very violent revenge, desired revenge, like a projected revenge. We would do to you what you did to us. You took our children and killed them. We would take yours and do the same thing, because you don't seem to feel the pain. And if that's what it takes to get you to do it, that's what we wish on you. You say that often enough, and you don't get into a good mood. I'm sorry. I have not seen Psalm 137 in a conservative prayer book in my life. I'm 70 now. I've never seen it. But in the Orthodox Siddurim, they still have it, because in essence, we don't throw anything out. We still have prayers after we read the Torah. Yikum Porkan means Shemaya. We have prayers that pray for the welfare of the Jews in the academies in Babylon. Well, they haven't been around for a few hundred years. So we don't...
Change it to Muncie or New York or something.
Right. Did they leave Muncie?
They're still in Muncie.
No, they're still there. No, that would be relevant. Yeah, I guess so. Pray for the welfare of all the Jews that study in Muncie or Lakewood. We're just talking about how, at the beginning of Birkat HaMazon, we sing Shir HaMalot on Shabbat. Well, during the week, you're supposed to say something else. But like I said, I've never seen it well, maybe in the weekday version of the Shir Sim Shalom, it's there. I don't know. I don't have a copy of that. But the one that we are used to singing is sort of like we're walking around in a dream. We're back from exile. We got something worth celebrating. And that's in contrast to the other. Then you get to the Zimun. The Zimun is the invitation to prayer. And you say it when there's 3 or more people. Lahazmin is to invite. So a zimun comes from that, meaning an invitation. And if there's 10 people, then you say something, you add a few words here and there, usually an Eloheinu. And I think when you get to 100, there's another thing you add, and 1,000, another thing you add, and when you get to 10,000, there's another thing you add. So when are you going to do that? When are you going to have a group together that ate together, and you have 10,000 people there to say Birkat HaMazon? Well, they did it at the last Siyum Daf Yomi, when the people who read a page of Talmud a day finish the entire Talmud. If you read one 2-sided page of the Talmud every day, including Shabbos. It takes you about 7.5 years to finish. And then there's a big siyum. And I say big, I mean the last one was at the MetLife Stadium in New Jersey. There were thousands of people, and they all knew that zimun that you say for when there's 10,000 or more people, because they were ready for that. Okay, we'll get back to the text of the 4 blessings of Birkat HaMazon probably after the holidays. Next week, David Weiss is doing the preliminary service. And then we're into holiday season. So stay tuned, and we are going to move on now to a very abbreviated Pesukei de Zimra. We have, for those of you at home, we have a different layout of chairs this morning. Just, I suppose we're trying it out for what it's going to be like for the holidays. You don't have a chair next to you to put your stuff on. So remember that. I'm sorry, Barry, what? Okay. Well, here we go. For those of you who have not yet put on your talit, you can say the blessing with me as I put mine on. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher kedishanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu lehitatef b'tzitzit.
Amen.
Lehitatef means to envelop, to enwrap yourself. And the modern word for an envelope is a matafa. And there we start. So now that our talitot, it's always sort of amused me that in Ashkenazis it's talisim, but in Sephardi it's talitot. It's one of those non-binary verbs. So we're on page 65. We don't go through that. If you want to sit, you can. We just never got into standing for everything. I was at a Yemenite minyan in outside of Jerusalem, and one inside of Jerusalem. And they don't stand for anything. They stand for the Amidah. That's it. The Baruch Hu, that's it. So I adopt international customs sometimes. On page 65, Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher natan l'sech v'bina lahavchin ben yom uben layla. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam shesani b'tzamo. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam shesani Yisrael. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam shesani ben chorim. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam pokeach ivrim. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam malbish arumim. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam matir asurim. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam zokef kefufim. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam rokach haaretz al hamayim. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam shasali kol tzorki. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam hamechin mitzadei gaver. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam ozer Yisrael b'gvura. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam oter Yisrael b'tifara. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam hanotein le'ohev koach. Amen, amen, amen. We're going to continue now on page 80, page 72. 72. And, wait a second, 72, right. And it's the psalm for the Yom HaShabbat, the Sabbath day. Where do you want to take it?
Let's do the top of it.
All right.
שיר לי יום השבת טוב להודות, הודו לאדוני ולזמר לשמחו העליון, לזמר לשמחו העליון. מזמור שיר לי יום השבת טוב להודות, הודו לאדוני ולזמר לשמחו העליון ולזמר לשמחו העליון, להגיד כחסדך ואמונתך בלילות, עלי עשור ועלי נבל, עלי היגיון בכינור. מזמור שיר לי יום השבת טוב להודות, להודות לאדוני ולזמר לשמחו העליון ולזמר לשמחו העליון. עוד ינובון בשיבה, דשנים ורעננים יהיו, להגיד כי ישר אדוני צורי ולא עוולתה בו. And we are now going to look at page, I think 80. Maybe it's so it's on Thursday, 79. Yeah, page 80. Now, we're going to go into a little bit more detail on this right before Rosh Hashanah, but this is a psalm that you say during the season of repentance. They call it the entire month of Elul, and then past the beginning of Tishrei until Hoshana Rabbah. That's the most you're going to say. Some people stop earlier than that. But this is a psalm that you say that's supposed to reflect how to feel about the season, a season of repentance, a season where you take your past deeds into account and say, what can I do to make my life better? What can I do to make my life with others better? And it starts off with a very confident, I'm going to overcome all my obstacles. But somewhere in the middle, it turns around, and the speaker is no longer confident and is begging God to take pity on him and shelter him. So there is a change in there. It's a dynamic. The first, then, what we have to assume is bravado, fake confidence. Like you have fake news, fake confidence. And then somewhere, and I can point it out to you, but like I said, we're going to do more of this later on. It changes to a more fearful and realistic, perhaps, approach. But what we're going to do right now is sing a little song that's part of this. We're going down 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 lines. Achat sha'alti. That's 6 or 7. I can't count. 7. 7 is the number of completion and wholeness. So. Achat sha'alti me'et Adonai ota avake. Again. Achat sha'alti me'et Adonai ota avake. Ududu shifti beveit Adonai kol yemei chayai. Lazot b'noam Adonai ulevaker b'heichalo. Lechazot b'noam Adonai ulevaker b'heichalo. Lule amanti lirot betuv Adonai be'eretz chaim. Kavei al Adonai chazak v'yames libecha v'kavei al Adonai. And we are now moving on to page 81, which is the Psalm 30. As you know, if you've been tuning in this early, this is one of my favorite psalms because it says you can go to sleep crying and wake up joyous because tomorrow is another day and you have another shot at it. Hafakte misperi lemecholi, pitakte saketaki v'tazrani simcha, leman yizamecha kavod v'lo yidom, Adonai Elohai liodam odeka. Now, what do we got here? Hoshia et amecha uvarech et nachal techorein v'nasem arolam. We did it. Mourner's Kaddish is on page 82. Yitgadal v'yitgadash shemei rabba. Amen.
Biolma divra kirutei v'yamlich malchutei. B'chayei chon u'v'yomei chon u'v'chayei l'chol beit Yisrael.
Bagalav Vizman Kariv Yimru Amen. Yehi Shmei Rabba Mevorach Leolam Olomei Omaya. Yitbarak v'yishtabak v'yitba'ar v'yitromam v'yitnaseh v'yitadar v'yitaleh v'yithalal shmei d'kudsha b'richu le'elah min kol birchata v'shirata tushbechata v'nechemata damiron b'yoma v'yimru amen. Yehi shlama rabba min shmaya v'chayim aleinu v'al kol Yisrael v'yimru amen. Oseh shalom b'mromav, hu yaseh shalom aleinu v'al kol Yisrael b'imru. Amen. Now, don't sit down. I'll have everybody at this point, if it's comfortable for you, to rise. Page 83, Baruch She'amar. Baruch She'amar v'haya ha'olam. Baruch hu, Baruch oseh v'reshit. Baruch Omer v'Yosef, Baruch Gozer Mekayim, Baruch Merachim al haaretz, Baruch Merachim al habriot, Baruch Mishalem Zachar Tov l'Reav, Baruch Chai la'ad v'kayam lanetzach. Baruch Podeu Matzil, Baruch Shemo. Yochid Chayol Mimel Mishabakim for that Shemo Hagadol, Baruch Atah Adonai, Melech Mehula Batishbachu. Now you can be seated as we continue on page 85 at the bottom. Romimu Adonai Eloheinu v'yishtachavu l'har kodsho. Romimu Adonai Eloheinu v'yishtachavu l'har kodsho. Ki kadosh Adonai Eloheinu romimu. Ki kadosh Adonai Eloheinu Adonai Eloheinu v'yishtachavu l'har kodsho. Romimu Adonai Eloheinu v'yishtachavu l'har kodsho. And we will go over to page 92. 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3. Oh, right. We're at the line that says L'makeh Mitzrayim. I think it's the 9th line. And then we'll do 4 lines from there, and then we'll do the 4 at the end. L'makeh Mitzrayim bivchoreihem ki le'olam chasto v'yetzei Yisrael tocham v'le'olam chasto v'yad hazaka u'v'zro netuya ki le'olam chasto v'gozer yamsuf ligzarim ki le'olam chasto v'b'shifleinu v'asmar lanu ki le'olam chasto v'yifrekenu mitzareinu ki le'olam chasto noten lechem l'chol basar ki le'olam chasto od le'el hashamayim ki le'olam chasto. And we'll go over to page 96. We'll do the beginning of Ashrei out loud. We'll read the rest of Ashrei to ourselves and finish it out loud.
Ashrei Yoshvei Beitecha, Odel Alucha Selah.
Ashrei Am Shekachalo.
Ashrei Am Shalonai Elohav. Tila L'Davi Ramim Chavam Navocha. תפילת אדוני ידבר פי ויברך כל בשר שם קודשו לעולם ועד ואנחנו נברך יה מעתה ועד עולם.
Hallelujah. And we'll go down to the bottom of 97, the last two lines. Yimloch Adonai li'olam, Elohai Tzion, Lidor vador. Hallelujah. Hallelujah. And we'll go over to page 99. And we'll continue 5 lines from the bottom on page 99. Yehallelu et Shem Adonai, ki niskav shemo levado, hodo al eretz v'shamayim, yarem kerem liyamo, tila lechol chasidav, v'ivnei Yisrael am gerovo. Hallelujah, hallelujah. And on page 100 in the middle, hallelujah, 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 el bikodsho, hallelujah, birkiya uzo, hallelujah, vigvurotav, hallelujah, kirov gulo, hallelujah, beteka shofar, hallelujah, beneva v'chinor, hallelujah, betofu macho, hallelujah, benini ve'ugav, hallelujah, betziltzulei shama, hallelujah, betziltzulei truah, kol ha'neshama, hallelujah, hallelujah. Hallelujah, kol ha'neshama, hallelujah, hallelujah, hallelujah. And it says, hallelujah, b'teka shofar. And if you're interested in being a mitokei shofar, or tokei shofar, Sheldon Weisbach has a class on Thursdays right here in this room from 6 to 7. And if you want to sound the shofar during the services, you have to get his okay. His gushpanka. We are now turning over to we're continuing on page 101. If it's comfortable for you, you may rise. We're on the first paragraph, 3 lines down. L'chol Adonai ha'gedula v'ha'gevura v'ha'tiferet v'ha'netzach v'ha'hod ki chol v'shamayim u'v'ha'aretz l'chol Adonai ha'mamlacha v'ha'minaseh l'chol erod. And we'll continue on 102, second section. And we're going to do the marching song for Oz Yashir Moshe, the Song of the Sea, because that's what the Israelites did. They marched through the waters on either side. Oz Yashir Moshe uvenei Yisrael et ashir hazol l'Adonai vayomru leimur ashir l'Adonai ki ga'o ga'a sus ravo rama vayam Aziva Zimraya Vayehili Lishua Ze'eli V'anvehu Elohei Avi Romemenhu Adonai Ish Milchama Adonai Shemo Markevo Paro V'chelo Yara V'yam U'mivchar Shalishav U'v'yamsu. Mi chamocha b'elim Adonai, mi chamocha nera b'kodesh. Nachita b'chastecha amzu ga'alta. Ki l'Adonai hamlucha u'melshel b'goyim. ועלו מושים בהר ציון לשבור את הר עשיו, והייתה לאדוני המלוכה, והיה אדוני למלך על כל הארץ, ביום ההוא יהיה אדוני אחד, ושמו אחד. We'll continue on page 104 in the middle. You may be seated. Ilufinu male shira, Maira kayamu, shonenu rina kamon, kamon gala. Okay, that side with Zev.
Ilufinu male shira,
Ilufinu male shira, shira kayamu, shonenu rina kamon gala. Ilufinu male shira kayamu, shonenu rina kamon gala. And we will continue on page 105, 3 lines from the bottom of the first paragraph. Nehalecha u'nshabecha u'nevarecha et Shem kodshecha, kamor leDavid, baruchi nafshi et Adonai, v'kol karovai et Shem kodsho. Ha'el b'tatzumot u'zecha ha'gadol b'kvod shemecha, ha'gibor la'netzach v'hanora b'norotecha, ha'melech ha'yoshev al kisei ram v'nisa. Page 105, third paragraph, Shochenad.
Shochenad marom v'kadosh shemo.
Shochenad marom v'kadosh shemo.
V'chadu radanu tzadikim Adonai l'sharim lavatihila. B'vishalim nidalal v'divrei tzadikim nidbarach. V'vilashal chazidim nidromah. V'kelem kedoshim tikadash.
Machalot v'vod amchol Yisrael.
Lihodo l'halal shabeach, v'felo meim l'hadel v'arech l'lechaleis, akol divrei shirot v'tishbechot, David ben Ishai, avdecha mishichecha.
You are invited to rise, page 106, Yishtabach.
Yishtabach shimcha la'ad makin lo'el melchadol, v'lo shmai matzvah. Birachah Adonai me'atav Adolam Baruch Adonai El Melech Od Batishbachot El HaHodahot Adonai Nivlahot Avachel B'Shiri Zimra Melech Elachei Olamim Yidgadav Hashem Rabah Yalmahai Divrach Ra'udei V'Amelech Malchutei V'chayim chonu v'yom echad V'chayim echol b'it Yisrael B'agala V'vizman kariv imrel
Amen.
Yesh me rabba mivorach Li'olam lo me'almaya Yitbarach v'ishtabach Vid bar vid man vid nase vid hadach vid hale vid halal shemedi kudejah
Brechu.
V'hila mikol birlachata v'shirata tushbechata v'nechemata v'hamirat b'yalma v'imrel.
Amen. Page 107, the Baruch.
Baruch Hu et Adonai HaMivorach.
Baruch Adonai Amvorach Leolam Va'ed.
Baruch Adonai HaMivorach Le'olam Va'ed.
You have the permission to be seated, please join me at the beginning of the first of two blessings before the Shema. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, yotzer or v'vorei choshech, oseh shalom v'vorei et hakol. We read to the bottom of page 107 to ourselves. Page 108, El Adon.
El Adon kol hamasim baruch mevorach v'viko neshama gadol v'tuvo malei olam nad v'ona zovei moto Amid gael v'chayot ha'kodesh v'nedar v'chavod ha'mekava zechud u'mishor lifnei chiso chesed v'rachamim lifnei chevodo Tovi me'oro shebara Eloheinu yitzaram b'dad ve'binahu v'askel kol ha'chagvura nadan bahem v'yahud mohoshim b'kerlev tevel Maleim zim v'vikim noga Ka'ezim ha'mechol ha'olam Semechim b'tzeitam v'sasim b'voam Osim b'yehim ha'ritzon konam Biyer v'chavod noni v'lishmot tzahal ha'verina V'zecher malchuto Koral ha'shemesh v'ayizerachor V'avehikim surot ha'vanam Shevach nonim lo Kol ziva marvo Tiveret v'gedola Raviv yavadim v'chayot ha'kodesh
On page 109, we continue by reading the first two paragraphs to ourselves.
Kulam hudim, kulam biblim, kulam giborim, kulam osim im havraveton gona, kulam bot kemit bihem. Bigdush aved haraha, b'shiva avizim raha, merach mishabachim. Farim arizim, magdishim, mahamlichim. Et shemel, hamelach hagadoh, hagim v'hanurah hagadoh.
Oh, tell Tony. Tell Tony.
Binachad ruach zavav avnimah kiddush aglaham gechahadonim yomim beirah kadosh 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 rais zivah mlacharet kivodo Vavadim echayot hakodesh brash gadol minazim li'matzravim umadam shavachim beyomrim Baruch kivod Adonai mimkomo.
We're at the bottom of page 110.
Urchadash atzion da'ir v'nizgeh kulanu meir aleoro Urchadash atzion da'ir v'nizgeh kulanu meir aleoro Baruch atah Adonai
Baruch v'Baruch Shemo.
Yotzer ha'me'orot
We continue on page 111 with the second blessing before the Shema, Ahava Rabbah.
Ahava Rabbah avdanu Adonai Eloheinu Chemed Amada aleinu, Avinu Malkeinu, V'havur avodeinu, Shebaruchu V'cha, Shebaruchu V'cha, Avinu Malkeinu, V'atin lamdim chukei chayim, Kidechaninu lamedeinu, Avinu Rachim Rachim Aleinu, V'dein v'libeinu lehavim, V'havinu haskil lishmor, V'lev hagadu le'lamein, V'shmar v'lasor, U'lekayim et kol ivrei, Ta'bud toratecha, V'ahava, V'ha'irneinu v'toratecha, V'dahabik libeinu v'mitzvotecha, V'yachid livavenu V'yachava u'liraha et shemecha, V'lo nevo V'olam v'ha'em, V'lo nevo V'olam v'ha'em, Ki v'shem Agadol hanara v'atafnu, Nagila v'nismecha, Nagila v'nismecha v'shuvatecha. V'havienu v'shalom,
Sit.
Me'yariba kanivod haaretz, V'tolicheinu Kamimehud ve'yarteinu, Ki helebo el yeshudana, Uvahanu v'acharita mikol havelashon, V'kiravdanu v'shimcha hagadol, Selah Beth Emet, V'yodolecha, V'liyacherecha be'yah. Baruch Adonai, Habach Yebema Yisrael b'yahava. Shema Yisrael, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad. V'yahavetah ehid Adonai Elohecha, v'chol levavecha v'chol nafshecha v'chol me'odecha, v'hayu advarim ha'ele asher anochi mitzavecha hayom alevavecha v'shinat avnevanecha v'li b'harta bam v'shivdecha b'vitecha v'lechtecha b'derech v'shokbecha v'kulmecha v'kashar dam le'oda yadecha v'yildoda v'hod minerecha v'chedav hamluzot beitecha v'misharecha.
And the next two paragraphs to ourselves. Jesus could have
Adonai Elohechem emet
v'yatziv nachon b'chayim You may release the tzitzit.
Mahakenu melech avodeinu gorlinu goel avodeinu tzvenu tzoi shvadecha shvadeinu bodinu machlinu melam shemecha Elohim zulatecha
Page 114.
Ez adavodeinu atahu meolam magir moshiv lemachim akod Emet, 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 atahu rishon.
Emet, 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 atahu acharot.
Uvi baladecha ilanu melech, melech oelu Moshiach. Uvi baladecha ilanu melech, melech oelu Moshiach.
ממצרים גלתנו.
Hallelujah, Baruch Mevarach, Moshe v'nei Yisrael, Achanu Shirah, Simcha Rabba v'Aruch Olam.
You are invited to rise.
Mi chamocha ba'ilim Adonai, mi chamocha v'edar magodesh, nahar adilon, ha'zei v'elech, shira chadasha shebechul gelim, shimchas v'dayah, yachak kulam hodovim lichu v'yamreu, Adonai Yimloch le'olam va'ed. So Israel, Uma be'ezrat Israel, U'dei v'numecha, Yehuda ve'Yisrael, Kol aleinu, Adonai tzvaot shemo, Kidosh Yisrael, Baruch Adonai,
Baruch Shema.
Yisrael.
The Amidah is said silently and standing from page 115, 8 or A or B. We skip page 116, we'll get that in the repetition, and then from 117 to 120.
The reader's repetition of the Amidah begins on page 115a. You may remain seated for a little bit.
Baruch atah
Baruch
Adonai Eloheinu v'Elohei Avoteinu Elohei Avraham Elohei Yitzchak Elohei Yaakov Ha'el HaGadol HaGiboy v'Hanora El Elyon Gomel Chazadim Dovim v'Gonei Yaakov v'Zacher Chasdei Avot v'Mevi Goel Livnei V'neim L'Mahan Shemo B'Yahava Melech Ozel Moshiach Magin Baruch atah Adonai Magid Avraham Adonai Bor Leolam Adonai Melchei Medim Adar of Loshia Moharin Adam Mechal Kel Chaim Bechesed Bechayim Medim Birachamim Rabim Somech Noflim Verovei Cholim Umadir Asurim Umekayim Epnadoli Shenei Afar Michamocha Bagivurot Umido Melach Melech Mimi Umechayim Umachmeach Yeshua V'nemanad Alachayot Medim Baruch atah Adonai Mechei HaMedim.
You are invited to rise for the Kedusha.
Nikadesh et Shimcha ba'olam Geshem shemakdishim odo b'shmei ma'arav Ka'kadu v'ayat nevi'echa V'kara zeh ve'amar Kadosh, 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 Adonai Tzevaot, L'chayat Kevodo. Az bikar ad gadol, adir v'chazak, mas v'hivko, mitnasim li'umat zirafim, li'umatam baruch yomehiru, baruch kivod Adonai v'hivko. Come, Chamakidu Tovia, V'tibach Aleinu, Igmerakim Anachnu Lach, Matachetim Lach B'Zion. B'Karol B'Yameinu, L'Elam B'et Tishgon. Tidgadol, V'tidgadol, V'doch Yerushalayim B'Lecha, V'dor V'dor, L'nitzach nitzach bim v'yeineinu tirena malchutecha Yimloch Adonai le'olam, Elohim Tzion, L'dor vador, Hallelujah. L'dor vador, L'dor vador, L'dor vador, L'dor vador, L'dor vador, Nagid God lecha. L'dor vador, L'dor vador, L'dor vador, L'dor vador, L'dor vador, Nagid God lecha. Nitzachim, Kidushadecha Nagdish, Kidushadecha Nagdish, Shivchacha Eloheinu, Mihipinu lo yabush, le'olam va'ed. L'dor vador, L'dor vador, L'dor vador, L'dor vador, L'dor vador, Nagid God lecha. L'dor vador, L'dor vador, L'dor vador, L'dor vador, L'dor vador, Nagid God lecha. Ki ha'melech gadol, gadol v'kadosh, gadol v'kadosh ata. Ki ha'melech gadol, gadol v'kadosh, gadol v'kadosh ata. Baruch atah Adonai,
Baruch Shemo.
El HaGadol.
on page 117.
Yismach Moshe b'matnat le'hagagi evet ne'eman kaharatalo kelvihil tiferet biro shana dahada b'yamda levanecha ahar ar Sinai shnei luchad avadim horid b'yahado v'chatuv bahem shemirat Shabbat v'chatuv bahem Shemirat Shabbat v'chatuv bahem Shemirat Shabbat v'chigatu b'toratecha V'shamru v'nei Yisrael et ha-Shabbat L'asod et ha-Shabbat V'darad ha-mirin olam B'nei uvei v'nei Yisrael Odi le'olam, b'nei uvei, b'nei Israel. Odi le'olam, kishish et yamim. Asa Adonai, et ha-shamayim, v'et ha'aretz. V'yom ha'shvi, v'yom ha'shvi, Shabbat vayi navash, vayom ha'shvi, Shabbat vayi navash. V'lo nidadaha, Adonai Eloheinu, v'gerot of Eloheinu chadol makin al devizilim, v'gapnu chadol ashkinu v'arehilim, Yid Israel, Amcha hadidah b'yahava, L'Israel Yaakov, Asher b'macharda, Ahami gadol yeshivi, Kulam yizbivi, Agul mitzuvecha, V'ashir atita bo v'kidashto, Chegad yamim ahata karahata, Zecher, l'ma'aseh v'reishi, Eloheinu, v'lo avotinu, Ritzei v'mnuchateinu, Kadisheinu b'mitzvotecha, V'tein chelkeinu b'toratecha, Sameinu b'mitzuvecha, V'samcheinu b'shuvatecha, V'taher libeinu, Yomdecha me'yemet, V'hatchilenu Adonai Eloheinu, V'yachova u'v'ratzah, Shabbat kodechecha, V'yanu Chulva Yisrael, Mikadeshei, Mikadeshei Shemecha, Baruch Atah Adonai, Mikadesh HaShabbat.
Page 118.
Ritzei, Adonai Eloheinu b'macha Yisrael, v'lefil Adam v'hashem, v'da'achavotah l'tvir b'techa. Ritzei, Adonai Eloheinu b'macha Yisrael, v'lefil Adam v'hashem, v'da'achavotah l'tvir b'techa. U'tefilata, v'yavadeka b'beratzon, V'liratzon amid avodat Yisrael Amecha u'tefilata V'yavadeka b'beratzon V'liratzon amid avodat Yisrael Amecha Ritzei V'techezena hinenu b'shavchalis yom rachamim Baruch Atah Adonai Hamachazeh Shechinata L'tziyah
Amen.
Modim Anachnu Lo. Atav Gilach Rachamecha V'merachim Gilahud Habachasadecha Elam Givinu La.
Middle of page 119.
V'yahok Lamid Barach V'yadabam Shemcha Makin Tzamid Le'olam V'ed V'chol HaChaim Yadocha Zela V'yhalel Shemcha B'yemet El Shadenu Shadinu Zela Baruch Atah Adonai Adon Simcha L'Chalel
Amen.
Eloheinu v'Elohei Avodeinu Barachenu v'Bracha HaMishulech Hashem B'Torah HaGvayim Moshe Avdecha HaBarami B'Aaron V'Anav Kohanim HaKedoshecha Gamor Yivarech Adonai Yishmerecha
Ken Yehi Ratzon.
Yair Adonai, Bana Velecha Vichunega.
Ken Yehi Ratzon.
Is Adonai, Bana Velecha, V'yazeim Lecha Shalom.
Ken Yehi Ratzon.
Page 120. Sim Shalom, Tova Uvracha Ba'olamchem, Ba'chesed V'rachamim V'rachamim Aleinu, V'yalko Yisrael, V'yalko Yisrael, Amecha, B'cheinu Avinu Kulahanu K'yechad B'yorpanecha, K'v'yorpanecha Natata Lanu, Adonai Eloheinu, Sim Shalom, Sim Shalom, Tova Uvracha Ba'olamchem, Ba'chesed V'rachamim V'rachamim Aleinu, V'yalko Yisrael, V'yalko Yisrael, Amecha, Darat Chayim V'yahavat Chesed, V'yahavat Chesed, Tzedakah V'racha V'rachamim, V'chayim V'shalom, Sim Shalom, Sim Shalom, Tova Uvracha Ba'olamchem, Ba'chesed V'rachamim V'rachamim Aleinu, V'yalko Yisrael, V'yalko Yisrael, Amecha, V'dav B'necha Livarech, Et Amcha Yisrael, B'chali V'chosha, B'shlomecha, Sim Shalom, Sim Shalom, Tova Uvracha Ba'olamchem, Ba'chesed V'rachamim V'rachamim Aleinu, V'yalko Yisrael, V'yalko Yisrael, Amecha, Baruch Adonai,
Baruch Shemo.
Hamivarech Ramo Yisrael, Bahar Shalom.
Amen. And we conclude this part of the service. We bid a fond adieu to Shacharit on page 138 with Kaddish Shalem.
Yigna Vigna Shemei Rabbah. Yamadi Vrachu Dega Vich Vachu Dega Chai Chod Mechod V'Chedach B'Nei Yisrael. Baglav Yizman Kari V'Gimro. Amen. Yehi Shmei Rabbah Mivorah. Yolam Elam Eholmaya. Yidbarach. Yidbarach V'Shtabach. Yidbarach V'Nasir. Ravid Avid Elam Shemei De Kodeshah.
Brechu.
Elam Yikam Bechata V'Shivata. Shivchata V'Nachmata. Raman V'Gimro.
Amen.
Yid Kabel Sodan Vodun L'Chol Yisrael. Kadam Avon V'Shmaiha V'Yimro.
Amen.
Peace, love, love, and Shemai, V'chayim Alin, V'akol Yisrael, V'Yimro.
Amen.
V'aseh Shalom V'Ramah, V'yaseh Shalom Aleinu, V'yalko Yisrael, V'Yimro. Amen.
Shkoach.
Baruch Tira.
You may be seated for a very brief period of time, but at least till, you can be seated till the ark is opened for the Torah service, which begins on page 139.
Ein kamocha v'Elohim Adonai v'ein k'ma'asecha malechudecha malechut kol olamim v'memshadecha b'chol dor v'dor Adonai melech Adonai malach Adonai imloch Le'olam v'olavim Adonai oz li'amo yitain Adonai yivarech et amo v'shalom Avarachamim Idi v'avitzanecha et Zion Ivnech Hamon Yerushalayim Ivnech Hamon Yerushalayim Ki v'cha levad vadachnu, melech erabin Yisrael, Adon.
And we will continue on page 140, second paragraph, Be'ana Rachetz. Kadisha, Kadisha, Yakira, Noemar, Tushbechan, Be'ana Rachetz, Be'ana Rachetz, Ve'lishmei Kadisha, Kadisha, Yakira, Noemar, Tushbechan, on page.
Adonai Eloheinu, ve'ishtachavu, lehar kodsho, ki kadosh, Adonai Eloheinu.
Well, Shabbat Shalom. A number of interesting things have happened this week in the history of the Jewish people. Let's take a look at some of them, shall we? On August the 15th, 1899, the Third Zionist Congress met in Basel, where the first two met. They didn't have a lot of imagination. They stuck in Basel. Herzl said Basel, Basel said Herzl. That was it. Well, this is not a great one. On August the 16th, in 1838, there were laws regulating the condition of the Jews of Saxony. Now, is anybody here an art historian of any sort? Did anybody ever hear of a painter named Larry Rivers would have been probably popular in the 60s of the last century? Anyway, he was born on August 17th. I don't know who he was or what he painted, but it wasn't houses. Now, this, I think, was a good thing. On August the 18th, 1846, 1846, the Jews' oath was abolished in Austria. Apparently, Jews had to take an oath in addition to whatever business contracts they signed in order to complete a deal. And they said, no, you don't have to do that anymore. So that was a pretty good thing. And then there was the ordering of destruction of Jewish books. That was 1599. And Shechita was prohibited in Switzerland. I think it's still illegal there. August the 21st. Today's the 21st? Yep. The English Parliament passed the Sheriff's Declaration Bill allowing Jews to serve as sheriffs. It was 1835. It changed the entire scope of the entire Western movie industry. Jewish sheriffs. You coming into town, you're new here? Yeah. Okay. Yeah, it brings us up to date there. I was just thinking, if you were trying to get out of Afghanistan right now, you might be wishing that the Taliban was going by Jewish war rules. Because Jewish war rules are a little different than the rest of the world. For example, you're besieging a city, you have to let one side, you can cover 3/4 of it, but you have to let one side be open so that they can flee if they want to. Now, this does two things. One is it gets the people out who are not good fighters anyway, and also it prevents the people inside a siege city from becoming completely hopeless and desperate. Because when you're dealing with a completely hopeless and desperate enemy, they will do anything, and that's not what you want. Even if you are the one in charge, you don't want to fight somebody who's desperate to do anything. Who knows what they'll do? So if you were trying to get to the airport, and that was your side out, that might be something you were kind of hoping that they might think about, but the odds are against it. This parsha has a lot of laws in it. As a matter of fact, there are more mitzvot in Parshat Ki Teitzei than any other parsha. It's like dense with halachot. And some of them are easier than others to observe, and some of them are more difficult. And some of them make different points. Here's one that's not so easy. It's at the beginning of our parsha, the part that we're not reading today, but it's just an example. There are rules about if a man is at war, he finds an attractive woman, and he wants her. He has to take her home, have her head shaved, her nails cut, and she has to get rid of the attractive clothing that she was wearing when the soldier first saw her. And then, after a month of living in his house with no contact, if he still wants her, they can get married. But that mitzvah takes a lot of work. It's also a good example. If you go reading just a little bit further in the Parsha, there's other examples of mitzvot that sort of protect women and their dignity. There's, if a woman is raped in the field, she doesn't have to, she doesn't get stoned to death for adultery. I know this sounds a little barbaric by our standards, but if she was in a city and she was engaged with a man who she was engaged, but she was having an affair with someone that she wasn't engaged to, and she didn't cry out in the city, she would be stoned to death as well at the edge of the city. But if she's in a field, there would be no one to hear her, so they assumed that she screamed and that she was crying out for help. So these are small steps by today's standards, but they were giant leaps back then.
just to mention a little bit more about the kinds of mitzvot we find. We find another one immediately after the captive, the female captive. We saw the wayward and rebellious child. Now, who's got one of those? So if a child is wayward and rebellious, the parent can take the child to the outskirts of town and stone the child to death. Yeah, my kids aren't here, are they? Okay. What's interesting about this one is that it serves as a good example of how the ancient rabbis, the sages, changed the direction of Judaism. It gave us an oral tradition, the Midrash, the Talmud, etc., by which to interpret the text. And it's stuck. The ancient rabbis looked at this and said, well, how wayward and defiant does the kid have to be? And since it says he doesn't listen to his voice of his mother or his father, they decide that he has to be exactly, equally disobedient to both his mother and his father at the same time to merit the death penalty. You see what's going on here? The rabbis didn't change a word of the Torah. They didn't contradict anything that's written down, but they over-define it to basically say it didn't exist anymore. There's no record of a wayward and defiant child ever being stoned to death at the edge of town or anywhere because of his attitude. You know, what's his attitude? He's driving down the road next to you and he wants you to hear his music. So we see that Judaism is a religion not of the Bible, but as the Bible is seen through the prism of the sages, the ancient rabbis. Anybody know anything else? Another one like that? Well, go ahead, Bernie. Well, actually, that's not so hard to conceive of or to do. It's not a real hard one. I'm going to talk about that. But what I was thinking of, eye for eye, tooth for tooth, ankle for ankle. That one, they said, couldn't be that way. If you take out the eye of everyone every time a person got blinded, Rashi says, soon you have a whole village of blind and toothless people. And you can't ever really retaliate with force exactly the same as it was given to you. They did a test where they punched somebody in the arm and they measure how hard the punch was. And then you hit the guy who hit you exactly as hard as he hit you. And every single time it was an increase of like 20%. So how you perceive the exact force and how you're going to retaliate with it is not easy to define. And do you know how the rabbis solved this one? They made it into monetary compensation. So if you hurt somebody, you blind somebody, there's a chart. How much is it worth? It's not perfect, but it works a lot better than eye for eye and tooth for tooth. The lex talionis, so to speak. Now there is, as I mentioned, an easier mitzvah to do here. And it's got nothing to do with keeping Shabbat or keeping kosher. It's got nothing to do with building the tabernacle or the altar. And it's the one that Bernie mentioned. Bernie wanted to spoil my entire talk. Cheer up, Bernie. If, while you're walking along the road, you happen upon a bird's nest and in a tree or on the ground, and the mother bird is sitting on the eggs or the young chicks, and you want to eat the eggs or the chicks, you can't just take them. You have to chase the mother bird away. Now, how hard is that? Now, you're not allowed to take the mother along together with the young either. You have to chase her away so she doesn't see you take the eggs or the chicks. And there are different interpretations as to what this mitzvah means. One is that you're not supposed to be cruel to animals, and that would be, the mother bird would be distressed, to say the least, when she sees you taking the chicks or the eggs out of her nest. But it may or may not be the case, because the mother bird would still be distressed when she finds the nest empty when she got back. But but maybe that's part of it. The mother bird has a natural instinct to protect their young. All animals have that. In fact, the fact that you're bigger and stronger than a bird should not blind you from being compassionate to animals. Another interpretation is that it's not meant to instill compassion for dumb animals, but it's to teach the concept of compassion so that you can be more compassionate to each other. We have laws like that back in the days of the temple. The priests were not allowed to sacrifice a mother and its offspring on the same day like a cow or a lamb or a sheep. Some even say that not seething a calf in its mother's milk, you know this one, about cheeseburgers, is also to teach us to be compassionate with each other. As I like to say, there's a value to not having a shrimp cocktail or a cheeseburger. But here with the bird, this has really got to be one of the easier mitzvot to fulfill. So it's a little unusual to find the additional phrase that comes with it. The reward for following the rule of chasing away the mother bird. Do you know what this is?
Long life.
Long life. Very good, Zeb. Now give the other people a chance. The reward, the Torah tells us that the reward that if we chase the mother bird away is that so you may fare well and have a long life. It's kind of an unusual little add-on. Just chase the mother bird away and you'll fare well and have a long life. And my first thoughts were, upon hearing this as a rule, does acting compassionately reduce a person's stress level? Does it bring down your blood pressure? I mean, how does it make you live longer? What does it do? What kind of natural product does it secrete when you show compassion to somebody that makes you live longer? You know, I mean, how many times do you actually see this reward mentioned in the Torah for following a mitzvah? You do this and you'll live longer. You know any other one? You know how many times it's mentioned?
To live longer?
Yeah, you do this, you'll live longer.
3 times?
There's one other time. One other time.
Honor your mother and father.
Yeah. That's exactly right. I told you, give these people a chance. Honor your father and your mother. Very good, Zeb. Now, we just saw that according to the Torah, not honoring your father and mother may get you the death penalty with a wayward and rebellious child. But in the Ten Commandments, it's honor your father and your mother, that you may long endure and that you may fare well. Now, chasing a mother bird away before taking the eggs, that's a low-stress, easy mitzvah. Honoring your mother and your father. Has anybody here ever had parents? This is not an easy mitzvah. This is, in fact, one of the hardest mitzvot to fulfill. No matter how great your parents were, we've built into it, into our system. It's hardwired. We have a rebellious instinct. Everybody has a moment where they rebel against their parents, some way or another. Some are good kids right up to the point they break. Some are like nasty about it the whole time. I've seen both. So one lesson we can draw is that in order to live a full and gratifying life, we have to do the hard things along with the least difficult things. That there is a spectrum of mitzvot, and we need to pay attention to all of them. To do great things, we have to live up to the highest standards and still pay attention to what may seem like trifling details. The details also add up to greatness, and greatness is expected of us. But these 2 commandments and the reward they share in common serve as the basis of another example of how Judaism was formed by the wisdom of the ancient rabbis, the sages. In the very first tractate of the Talmud, Tractate Brachot, Masechet Brachot, Brachot means blessings. There's a story about a father who asks his son to climb a ladder and chase the mother bird away to get the bird out of the nest that's up in the tree and get the eggs. And the boy does what's asked of him, honoring his father, climbs up, chases the mother bird away, and while he's coming down, the ladder wobbles and breaks, and the boy falls and dies. Now here this boy is performing the 2 commandments in the Torah that say, do this and you'll live longer. And he dies. This troubled the rabbis. And it led to some of the deepest thinking in the Talmud. Oh, some said, how can it be? Well, maybe it doesn't apply. You have an old wobbly ladder, you know. The general consensus is the story tells us that there's an afterlife. Because we believe in a just God, and we are not blind, and we are not stupid, and we do not believe we live in a just world. We see that we don't. So if there's to be justice in the world, well, we can take some small comfort that when we see an injustice, we're obliged to correct it. And that's going on a lot these days with the different lives that should matter more. And we're supposed to vote. And you're supposed to feed the hungry and clothe the unclothed and support Mary's Kitchen and repair the world as best you can. But by fulfilling the most difficult commandments as well as the easiest ones, we're engaged in repairing the world, this world, and making it a great place to be and smoothing the path for the world to come. As Jews, we believe there's an afterlife. It's referred to in the second blessing of the Amidah when we say that God keeps his faith with those who sleep in the dust. We see biblical characters refer to an afterlife. We see King Saul gets the prophet Samuel back from the grave to have a chat with him. It doesn't work out well, so it's another thing that sort of emphasizes you're not supposed to do it. But we just don't know much about this afterlife. So we kind of focus on this world, on this life, and the kind of person you have to be to live a good, long, full life. And this week's clues are honor your parents, and that can be a hard thing to do, and be compassionate. And that might not be as hard as you think. Shabbat Shalom. Bruchim to you. Our Torah portion today, as I mentioned, was Ki Tetzei. We are in the second of 3 triennial readings. We call it the triennial cycle when it's all put together and it goes around from one to the next. In the part that we're not reading today, the Torah describes the only permissible way that a woman captured in battle can be married to her captor. In a case where a man is married to 2 wives, that's the one about the captured woman. You know, another thought occurred to me as I'm reading this and I'm watching the news. You know, I mentioned that there are a slew of little laws that protect women. And I can't, I'm thinking that, if Andrew Cuomo or Larry Elder had known, this law, they might not be in the mess they're in right now. Another thing that they talk about, if a man is married to 2 wives, one of them that he doesn't love, and she gives birth to the firstborn son, that son's right to inherit a double portion is protected against the father's desire to give it to the children of the favored wife. The penalty for a wayward and rebellious son, as we saw, is death by stoning. The body of a hanged person must not be left on the gallows overnight. It was the dwelling place of the soul, which is holy, and it too has become holy. A person finding lost property has a responsibility to track down the owner and return it. Men are forbidden from wearing women's clothing and vice versa. Now that's going to change in every generation. Somebody comes along and says women can't wear men's clothing, you're going to have a hard time defining what that is. But in the time of the Talmud, it meant that men could not wear pants. It's not what men wore back then. The mother bird. A fence has to be built around the roof of a house to prevent people from falling. It's called a parapet in English. It's forbidden to plant a field with a mixture of seeds or to plow using an ox and a donkey together, or to combine wool and linen in a garment. And a 4-cornered garment has to have twisted threads. They're called tzitzit in the midbar. They're called something else here. Laws and penalties in regard to sexual offenses are also detailed. And we get to where we start our reading today. The first aliyah is on page 1123 in your big red chumash, starting with verse 8. Now we get into the laws of how to treat who in war. We saw that people from certain tribes, the Ammonites and the Moabites, can never join the Israelites because of what they did to us during our marches in the wilderness. But we are to tolerate the Edomites because they're our cousins, and we're to accept the Egyptians because we were strangers in their land, and the third generation of their children can join the tribes. And when you think of it, maybe there were Egyptians among the Israelites, the Erev Rav, that joined us when we left Egypt. And the generation entering the land would be the third generation, and they could be accepted. So certain purity laws are addressed. Like I say, it's just jam-packed, full of mitzvot. Page 1123, verse 8. Amen. ואתם מדליקים עליהם חיים כולכם היום.
ברכו את אדוני המבורך.
ברוך לעולם ועד.
ברוך אדוני המבורך לעולם ועד. ברוך אתה אדוני אלוהינו מלך העולם, אשר בחר בנו מכל העמים, ונתן לנו את תורתו. ברוך אתה אדוני.
ושמו. אמן.
Amen. Lo tetaiv adomi ki achichahu. Lo tetaiv mitri ki gir hayita behartso banim. Asher yivadu lahem dor shlishi. Yavo lahem bikal Adonai. Ki tetzei machane aloi vecha v'nishmarta mikol davar ra. Ki yevecha ish asher lo yetahor mikra laila. Ve'asel michutz ha-machane. Lo yavo el toch ha-machane. Vayal lifnot. Erev Yirchas B'mayim Chvo HaShemesh Yavo El Toch HaMachaneh.
ברוך אתה אדוני אלוהינו מלך העולם, אשר נתן לנו תורת אמת, חיי עולם נוטע בתוכנו. ברוך אתה אדוני תן התורה.
Amen. Talmud Levi, Talmud Rachel, Bat Pesach HaLevi, Levi.
The second aliyah begins on page 1124 with verse 13. And the Torah really does give instruction on a lot of different things. And there's some rather personal ones that are dealt with in the second aliyah, so be neat.
Baruch Adonai HaBorach.
Baruch Le'olam va'ed.
Baruch Adonai HaBorach Le'olam va'ed. Baruch Atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, asher bachar banu mikol ha'amin, v'natan lanu et torato. Baruch Atah Adonai
Baruch Shemo.
noten haTorah.
Amen.
Amen. V'yati elecha michutz lamachaneh, v'yatzata shama chutz, v'yateit yelecha al azenecha, v'yabashivdecha chutz, v'chavar tava, v'shavta v'chisita et se'atecha, ki Adonai Elohecha b'talech b'kerv machanecha l'hatzilcha, v'lati toivecha levanecha v'hamachanecha kadosh, v'lo yirevecha erva davar, v'shahav me'acharecha.
Baruch Atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, asher natan lanu torat emet, v'chayei olam nata b'tochenu. Baruch Atah Adonai
Shemo.
noten haTorah.
Amen.
Amen. Talmud Shlishi. Talmud Sarah ben Yisrael Rachel. Shlishi.
The third aliyah begins on page 1124 as well. It's the last Hebrew line, verse 16. If a slave seeks refuge, and you have to give it. And if there's some things that you're not supposed to take money for, and if you do, that money cannot be used in the temple. Baruch Adonai Baruch Le'olam va'ed.
Baruch Adonai HaBarach Le'olam va'ed. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, asher bachar banu mikol ha'amim, v'natan lanu et torato. Baruch atah Adonai
Shemo.
noten haTorah.
Amen.
Amen. Lo tazkir evet el Adonav, asher yinatzel elecha me'im Adonav, imcha, yeshiv b'kirbecha, b'makaho asher yivchar becha tzarecha, b'tov lo tonenu. Lo tiyeh kedisha b'bnot Yisrael, v'lo yeh kadesh b'bnei Yisrael. Lo tavihi et nan zonah, u'mechir kelev beit, Adonai Elohecha l'chol neder, ki toavat Adonai Elohecha, gam shnehem.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, asher natan lanu Torah emet, v'chayei olam nata b'tochenu. Baruch atah Adonai noten haTorah.
Amen.
Talmud Revi'i, Talmud Moshe ben Nehemiah. Revi'i.
The fourth aliyah begins on page 1125. Jews are not allowed to take interest for loans to Jews. Money can be lent to non-Jews for interest, and if you make a vow using God's name, you're bound by penalty to live up to it, but if you're smart, you won't make any vows.
Baruch Adonai HaMorah.
Baruch Adonai
Baruch Adonai HaMorah Le'olam V'ed. Baruch Atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, asher bahar bonu mikol ha'amim v'notan lanu et Torato. Baruch Atah Adonai noten haTorah.
Amen. Lo tashich le'achicha neshech kesef neshech ochel neshech kol davar asher yishach anachri tashich le'achicha lo tashich l'man yivarechecha Adonai Elohecha b'chol mishlach yadecha al haaretz asher ata v'shama l'rishta ki tidor neder l'Adonai Elohecha lo tacher l'shalmo ki darosh yidrishenu Adonai Elohecha me'imach ve'yabecha achid V'chidechta lindor, leneder lo yebecha chid, motza sivatecha tishmor v'asita, kasher nadarta l'Adonai Elohecha nidava, asher dibarta b'ficha.
Baruch Atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, asher notan lanu Torah emet, v'chayei olam nata b'sohenu. Baruch Atah Adonai noten haTorah.
Amen.
Talmud Chamishi.
The fifth aliyah begins on page 1127 with verse 25. If you go to somebody else's field, you're allowed to eat what you want to in their field, from their field. But you can't, no takeout. You can't take anything with you. Grapes included. Now we get to the situation of a man giving his wife a divorce, gives her a get, and she marries someone else. If husband number 2 also divorces her, she's not allowed to go back to the first husband. Page 1127, verse 25.
Talmud Simali Babat. Berle Berifka Chamishi.
Baruch Adonai HaBaruch.
Baruch and Rachman.
Baruch Adonai HaBaruch Le'olam V'ed. Baruch Atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, asher bachar banu mikol ha'amim, v'natan lanu et Torato. Baruch Atah Adonai noten haTorah.
Amen. Ki tavo v'cherem re'echa v'chal ta'navim k'nafshecha sovecha v'elkayecha lo titin. Ki tavo b'kamat re'echa v'katavta midilot biyadecha v'chermesh lo taniv al kamat re'echa ki kach v'ishishav ala v'hayaha im lo timtzachim beinaha ki matzava ervat davar v'chatav la sefer kritut v'natan biyadav v'shalcha mi beito v'yatsa mi beito v'cha v'yatal ish acher usneaha ha'ish acharon v'chatav la sefer kritut v'natan biyadeha v'shalcha mi beito o ki amud ha'ish acharon asher lakcha lo l'isha v'yuchal v'ala harishon asher shilcha Lashuv lakachdaha li'olo l'isha acharei asher hutamaha ki dvavahi livnei Adonai lo tachati et haaretz asher na Elohecha noten lecha nachala.
Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu melech haolam, asher natan lanu Torah emet, v'chayei olam natan b'tocheinu. Baruch atah Adonai, noten haTorah.
Amen. Tamot shishi.
The sixth aliyah. Okay.
Tamot latofega. Vashmuel Wolf. V'chaika shishi.
We're on page 1128, beginning with verse 5. We're back to war rules. If a man marries a woman, he's exempt from military service for 1 year in order to make his wife happy for at least 1 year. Another rule is that you can't take the upper millstone as collateral for a loan because that would deprive a household of the way of making bread. Kidnapping is forbidden. Also, we are reminded to follow the priest's instructions when a skin affliction is suffered. And the model is what was referred to in Leviticus and how God treated Miriam in the book of Numbers when she was stricken with tzara'at, usually translated badly as leprosy, and when she spoke ill of Moses and he cured her. So we're on page 1128, verse 5.
Baruch hu Adonai hambarach.
Baruch Adonai.
Baruch Adonai hambarach le'olam va'ed. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher bachar banu mikol ha'amim v'natan lanu et Torato. Baruch atah Adonai noten haTorah.
Amen.
Yikach ish charasha. Amen. Kikach ish charasha. Lo yetzi batzava v'lo yavor alav l'chol davar naki elevato shana achad v'ismach et ishto asher lakach lo yachavor rechaim v'rechev ki nefesh hu chovel ki matzei ish gonav nefesh me'achav mibnei Yisrael v'ita meherbo mechoro u'mit haganav hahu v'yartara mikirbecha Hishamer ben nega hatzarat, lishmor mod v'lasot, kecho asher yeru erchem akonim alevim, kasher tzivitim tishmeru la'asot, zachor ed asher asar Adonai Elohecha l'Miriam b'derech b'tzeilchem b'Mitzrayim.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher natan lanu Torah emet v'chayei olam natan b'tocheinu. Baruch atah Adonai
Shmo.
noten haTorah.
Amen. Yamot Shvi'i.
The seventh aliyah begins on page, well, I guess it's verse 10, so that would be the very bottom of 1129, with chapter 24, verses 10 through 13. When you do loan something out on a pledge, you can't go into the home of the borrower to get the pledge back. If he pledged his garment and he's poor, you cannot keep it overnight because he needs it to sleep in.
Yamot David ben Avraham Shvi'i. Baruch Adonai Barak.
Baruch Adonai Baruch Le'olam Va'ed.
Baruch Adonai Baruch Le'olam Va'ed. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher bachar banu mikol ha'amim v'natan lanu et Torato. Baruch atah Adonai noten haTorah.
Amen. Kita sevri acham asad muma. V'davo beito lavot avoto. Bachutz amal v'aish. Asher atano sheva. Yotzi elecha et avot hachutza. V'mish anihu lo tishkav avoto. Hashehiv tashiv laho. Et avot gvo hashemesh. V'shachav b'simlato uvarcheka. V'lechat yetzadaka. Lifnei Adonai Elohecha.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher natan lanu Torah emet v'chayei olam natan b'tocheinu. Baruch atah Adonai noten haTorah.
Amen. Mishap Prayer. Please keep in mind all the people on our list and anyone else who needs a prayer.
May the source of strength, who bless the ones before us, help us find the courage to make our lives a blessing, and let us say, Amen. Ishebera imotenu, Mikar habiracha lavotenu, vessels in need of healing, with refuah shlema, the renewal of body, the renewal of spirit, and let us say, Amen. Yid kadav yikadash shemi rabba.
Amen.
B'yalmad v'rach v'rachutei v'yamelech malchutei v'chayei chadav yomecha v'chayei echol b'nei Yisrael b'agala b'agala v'levizmah k'hariv Yisrael.
Amen.
Yehi shmei rabba mevorach li'olam v'lo me'almaya Yitbarach v'ishtabach v'yipar v'yitma v'yitnasei v'yitadar v'yitaleh v'yitalal shemei dekudeshah v'yila mingol bir l'chada v'shirada dush v'chada v'nechemaka damirat b'yalemat Yisrael.
Yamud, Chazan, Ze'ev, Shalom,
Ben Hara,
Bev Haran,
Tzvi Chaim,
Steve Chaim,
V'asna Leah.
V'Hasnalea, Maftir.
Chazak.
Okay, it's the same thing, right? Okay, I got it. Baruch Hu Adonai Borah.
Baruch Adonai Baruch Le'olam Va'ed.
Baruch Adonai Baruch Le'olam Va'ed. Baruch Atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher bachar banu mikol ha'amim v'natan lanu et Torato. Baruch Atah Adonai noten Torah. Ki tashev re'acha masad me'uma v'tavo el beito l'avot avoto b'chus amor v'ish asher ata noshevo yotzi lecha et havot hachutza v'mishanihu lo tishkav avoto hashiv tashiv lahu et avot kvo hashemesh v'shachav b'samlato v'archeka v'lechat yetzedaka lifnei Adonai Elohecha. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher natan lanu Torah emet v'chayim v'olav natan b'tochinu. Baruch atah Adonai noten Torah.
Amen.
Yavon magbiya, tavon agolele. V'yizol ha'Torah asher son Moshe lifnei bnei Yisrael avi Adonai v'yad Moshe.
And as the Torah is seated, you can be seated. Looks like a complicated maneuver over there. The Haftorah today begins on page 1138, and this is quite possibly the shortest Haftorah in the book. I mean, Bar Mitzvah kids fight for this Haftorah. These 10 verses reassure Israel that even though God may have forsaken them for a little while, with vast love, God will take back his bride, his people. And here the prophet has the Lord making as strong a promise as the one he made after the flood, never to destroy the world again by water, that the people will be restored, and you can take that to the bank. The imagery is not on Shabbos, but the imagery is that of a marriage with the husband, God here, faithfully taking his wife back who betrayed him. Page 1138.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, asher bachar b'neviim tovim v'rotzav v'divreihem hanemarim b'emet. Baruch atah Adonai, habacher b'torah v'Moshe avdo, Yisrael amohim v'yei hamet, v'tzedek. Ani akara lo yalada pitzchirin avatzali lo chala, ki rabbi b'nei shomema, b'bnei v'ula amar Adonai, v'chivi mikol mohaleich, v'viyod mishkenotayich, yadu otach zochi, harichim et harayich, tidodayich chazeki, ki amin ismoho tifrotzi, v'zareich koyim yirash, v'arim neshamahod yoshivu, Altiri kilo devashi, Velti kami kilo dachbiri, Kivo shed lumayich dishkachi, Becherpat almenuzayich lo diskriod, Kivo alayich osayich, Adonai Tzavot Shema v'goleich, Kidosh Yisrael, Elohei chol haaretz yikarehi, Ki chesha zuva, Vatsuva ruach krach Adonai, V'shed nurim, Ki timai samar lahayich, V'rega katon azavtich, Rachabim gedolim akabtzich, V'shetzev gehetzef histarti, Fanai rega mimech, V'chesed olam nichandich, Amar golech Adonai, Ki meinoach zoli, Asher nishbahati, Me'avor meinoach od, Al haaretz, Ki nishbahati, Miksov alayich, U'migarbach, Ki harim, Yabushu, Vagvot muta, V'chazdi, Mitich lo yabish, V'rich lo milah tamud, Amar machavich, Adonai. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, Zor kol olamim, Tzadik v'chol derot, Elad elad hamev yosef, Medaber mekayehim, Shekol devarav emet v'tzedek. Ne'eman, Atahu Adonai Eloheinu, v'ne'emanim dvarecha, v'dvarecha midvarecha, achal yashuz rikam, ki hamelech ne'ema v'rachaman ata baruch atah Adonai, Elad ne'eman b'chol devarav, Rachim atzion ki beit chayenu, v'la'alu v'nevesh tosheah b'mirav yaminu baruch atah Adonai, B'samech tzion b'vaneha, Samchinu Adonai Eloheinu b'liyahu hanavi avdecha, V'malchut beit David mishichecha, b'imhei hayavav v'yagel libenu, al gizah lo yishev zar, v'lo yinchalu od, acherim ekivodo, ki b'shem kodshecha nishbat Allah, Shalach ben Ira le'olam ba'ed baruch atah Adonai, Magi David, al Torah v'al avodah v'al nevi'im, k'yom ha'shabbat hazeh, Shelad alanu Adonai Eloheinu l'krishav l'mnucha, v'chavod u'tifaret, al hakol Adonai Eloheinu, anachnu modim l'hach u'mevarachim otach, Yivrach shimcha b'ficho chai tamid le'olam ba'ed baruch atah Adonai, Mikadesh HaShabbat.
Shekoach.
That's a very familiar Haftorah after teaching it to many a Bar Bat Mitzvah student.
You get such a short one.
He's the cantor. You can get whichever one you want. Shekoach. Now we continue on page 148. And we'll read together the bottom paragraph as a prayer for our country. May this land, under your providence, be an influence for good throughout the world, uniting all people in peace and freedom, helping them to fulfill the vision of your prophet. Nation shall not lift up sword against nation, neither shall they experience war anymore. And let us say, Amen. Makor HaChaim Shemayim, source of all life, we ask for a quick end to hostilities around the world, domestic and foreign, and the swift and safe return of our young men and women to their homes, and let us all say,
Amen.
prayer for the state of Israel, page 149. Avinu sheba shemayim, sur Yisrael v'go'alo, barech medinat Yisrael, reshit tzmichat gulatenu. Hagen aleha be'evrat hastecha, ufros aleha sukat shlomecha, ushlach orcha v'yamitcha l'rosheha, soreha v'yoatzeha, v'taknem v'yetzat tova milfanecha. Chazek et yidei meginei erez kodshenu, v'anhilem Eloheinu Yeshua, v'yater et nitzachon teatren. V'natata shalom ba'aretz, v'simchat olam liyoshvea, v'nomar, Amen. And now welcome to the Bima, our chief astrologist, to help us out with page 151.
Shreyos Fevetecha Oda Haluka Sela.
Ashreyan Shekachalo.
Tila LeDavid Armim Kaloka Kamelech. The Avrakashin Kalil Lam Vaed.
B'chol yom abrachecha.
Lashin Kalil Lam Gadol Anai Mekula Meo Velitula Toe Cheker.
Dor l'dor yishabach masacha. Gvuratecha yagidu.
Hadar Kevohotecha Vidifreni Flotecha Sika.
V'zuznelotecha yomeru. Gduacha saprena.
Zeker Raftu Kaya Biu Fisikadakaya Nenu.
Chanum v'rachum Adonai. Erech apayim ugdol chased.
Tov Adonai Lako V'rakamav Koma Saf.
Yuducha Adonai kol ma'asecha. V'chasidecha yivarchucha.
Kivo Mahutaka Yomeru Givuracha Yetaberu.
Lo dir ibnei Avlam gevurotah. V'kvod hadar malchuto.
Mahutka Mahukolami Mumem Chafteka Bekodor Fador.
Somech Adonai l'chol hanoflim. V'zokef l'chol hakfufim.
Ineko Eleka Yesaberu Fanotin Lahem Eroklam Beito.
Poteach et yedecha. Masbir l'chol chai ratzon.
Sadik Adonai Bekotvaka Vikasi Bekoma Saf.
Karov Adonai l'chol korav. L'chol asher yikru ve'emet.
Ritsonia Viase Veshavtam Nishma Vyoshiev.
Shomer Adonai kol avad. Et kol shayim yashmid.
Tilat Adonai Yidaber Pi Vivareko
Basar Shem Kodsho Le'olam Va'ed.
Vanapnu Nevarek Ya Mehotzata Olam
Hallelujah.
Hallelujah, Shem Adonai. It is God, Shem Olevadaho. Haraneres, Vishamayim, Vayarem Ge'eretz Ni'alom, Ti'alecho, Chasida, B'nei Yisrael, Lam Krovo. Hallelujah, hallelujah. He's worthy to be.
Mishap Prayer, Azeh Halvanom.
Merkirim Kvoega Levadahon, Viseriahon, Kevohon and Ravim.
Ishkol.
Yachil Nitar, Yachil Adonai, Kibahar Kadish, Kol Adonai Yechodah, Bechesav Yarahon, Ulecha Halam, Gulahu Amer Kavod, Adonai Lamabuya, Shavayeshev Adonai, Melech Leolam, Adonai Yosiyam Moitin, Adonai Yevaharech
Rekadamo Vashalom.
L'Necho Yehovah.
Page 154.
Ki lekam v'havnata dilachem, Tati ahada salve,
deck is closed, but we remain standing for the Chatzi Kaddish that marks the end of the Torah service, takes us into the Musaf. We're on page 155. Amen.
Yesh me'rama mevorach li'olam olam me'almaya Yitbarach v'ishtabach v'yitbar v'yitma v'yitnaseh v'yithadar v'yithalal shemede kudeshah v'yila mikol birlachata v'shirata tushbechata v'nechamata Da'amirat mi'alma v'imrel
Amen. We pray together for the Musaf Amidah on page 156b and 157 for Kedusha. Then we'll finish silently from 158 to 161.
Baruch atah Adonai Elohim Elohei Avoteinu Elohei Avraham Elohei Yitzchak Elohei Yaakov Elohei Sarah Elohei Rivka Elohei Rachel Elohei Leah Ha'el HaGadol HaGibor VeHadora El Elyon Gamel Chazanim Tovim V'Ganei HaGahol V'Zacher Chasdei Avod V'Mevi Koel Livnei Bneihem Le'man Shemo B'Yahava Melech Ozer U'Vulkid Moshiach U'Magin Baruch Atah Adonai Magid Avraham V'Magid Sarah Ada Gibor Le'olam Adonai Mechemiti Ma'ada Pavloshia Murin Ha'atam Mechakel Chaim V'chesed B'chayim Eidim V'rachamim Rabim Samech Nafim V'rovech Cholim U'madir Asumim U'b'kayim Emunatah Lishenei Afar Michamocha B'givurot U'miro Melach Melech Mimid U'michael U'mashmeach Yeshua V'nemanad Alachayot Beitim Baruch Atah Adonai B'chei Hamitim
Amen.
V'narizecha v'nagishecha Kisohasiya Sarvei Kodesh Hamakishim Shiva HaKodesh Kakatu Ayan V'yecha V'garazel Zeviyamar Kadosh, Kadosh, Kadosh Adonai Tzivaot, Melech Haaretz Givodo, Givodam Haliyolam, Misharidam Shalim Zelazeh, Hayim Mikom Givodo, Yumadam Baruch Yomeru, Baruch Givodo Adonai Mimkomo, 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 Live Birachamim, V'yachonam Aham Yachadim Shema, Erev Avager, B'chayom David, B'amayim Be'yava, Shema Omrim, Shema Yisrael, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad, Hu Eloheinu, Hu Avinu, Hu Malkeinu, Hu Mashiachenu, Ve'hu Yashmi'enu, V'racham
Adonai, li'il lachem Elohim. Mi Adonai Elohechem,
V'divri kodecha katuv le'mar, yimloch
Mochem
Adonai
Elam,
le'olam, el hayat Zion,
L'dor vador, hallelujah.
L'dor agid kodecha, l'netzach netzach v'nishanecha nagrid, shivchacha lo'ed mipino b'sela ma'ed, ki amelch v'kadosh, Ata barach, Ata Adonai, Ha'el HaKadosh.
158 to 161. תיקנת שבת. If you need more time to finish your own individual Amidah, please take the time to do so, or you can join us on page 181 as we wrap up the section with Kaddish Shalem.
Amen. Yet Bobby Stabach, the Bobby Maminasi, the David of the Laws of Mede, Kodesha. They let me go back to Davis, look at the Rakamata, the Ramama, they give a row. Did God also don't vote to look like Israel? God up, a hundred Ishmael, they give a row.
Amen.
He's not loving Shemai, the Chaiman, the Novak of Israel, they give a row.
Amen.
O Shalom, Bimrama, Uyah, Shalom, Aleinu, Ve'alga Yisrael, Ve'imru, Amen. Yah Shalom, Shalom, Shalom Aleinu,
2, Ein Kelohenu.
In Kelohenu, in Kadonenu, in Kimagenu, in Moshiachenu, me, in Kelohenu, me, in Kadonenu, me, in Kimagenu, me, in Moshiachenu, in Kelohenu, in Kadonenu, in Kimagenu, in Moshiachenu, Nada, Elohenu, Nada, Elohenu, Nada, Elohenu, Nada, Emoshiachenu, Elohenu, Ekadonenu, Enkimagenu, Enkemoshiachenu, Baruch Elohenu, Baruch Elohenu, Baruch Emagenu, Baruch Emoshiachenu, Elohenu, Ekadonenu, Enkimagenu, Enkemoshiachenu, Atahu Elohenu, Atahu Elohenu, Atahu Emagenu, Atahu Emoshiachenu, Elohenu, Ekadonenu, Enkimagenu, Enkemoshiachenu, Atahu Eshekdiru, Avoteinu, Leva Anecha, Et Kitoret Hasamim, Elohenu, Ekadonenu, Enkimagenu, Enkemoshiachenu.
Page 183, Elena L'Shabeach. And you may be seated. In solemn testimony to the unbroken faith which links our generation to the next, those in mourning or observing a yahrzeit will in one moment rise to praise God's name with the words of the Mourner's Kaddish on page 184. But first, yahrzeits observed this week include Shirley Ross Abramson, Rita Doris Boxer, Goldie Kaprov, Mary Charmetz, Selma Edwards, Rose Eisenberg, Ron Shaul Eshet, Harry Fine, Harold Finkelstein, Albert Friedman, Louis Garber, Hannah Greenblatt, Ida Gutman, Joseph R. Harris, Dora Kirsch, Tilly Kuhlman, Fannie Lee, Aaron Lewis Levitan, Emmanuel Levy, Gertrude Manasevic, Bella Milkis, Barry Howard Mahler, Leo Morgenstern, Hazel Irene Perlman, Stella Projan, Sherman David Remaze, Miriam Rimland, Leon Rodman, Sylvia Sachs, Abraham Samuelson, Helen Sarna, Haskell Schoenfeld, Mrs. Darlene R. Seligman, Devorah Bat Herschel Vatjalea, Bigan Ben Shalom, Sima Sojer, William Strisak, Max Tunkel, and Joseph Seifert. Mourner's Kaddish is page 124, and feel free to stand next to anyone saying Kaddish to support them. Yitgadal v'yitkadash shemei rabbah v'yomad divra kirutei v'yamlich malchutei b'chayei chon v'yomei chayei d'chol beit Yisrael b'gala v'zman kari v'yimru amen. Yehei shemei rabbah mevorach v'ed Rak v'yishtabach v'yitpa'ar v'yitromam v'yitnaseh v'yitadar v'yitalach shmei d'kudsha b'rechu kol birchata v'shirata tushbechata v'nechemata damiron b'yoma v'imru amen. Yehei shlama rabba min shmaya v'chayim aleinu v'al kol Yisrael v'imru amen. Say shalom b'mroma, huya say shalom, alenu v'yakol Yisrael, imru, amen. And you want to, please stay standing for Kiddush if you can.
Mishap Prayer Israel et Shabbat, Lashon et Shabbat, Lidorot Amrikalam, Meini, Ulevin Israel Aoti. Ve'olam kishes et yamim, hasadonai, et hashamayim et haaretz, u'vayom hashvi, Shabbat ve'inafash. Akim birach, l'naidim ha-Shabbat, v'akadeshehu, Savrayim anan rabanan mabatai.
L'chaim.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech ha'olam, borei pri ha'gafen.
Amen.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech ha'olam, asher k'neshanim mitzvotav v'tzivanu, al netilat yadayim. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech ha'olam, motzi lechem min haaretz.
Yes, we have announcements.
Shabbat Shalom. Sorry. As most of you know who've been coming regularly, we have been serving a light lunch after services. Most of you know this, and most of you are really good about it, but you have to RSVP to the office by Thursday at 3 p.m. so we know how much food to make. So if we don't have 25 reservations, we will have to skip the lunch and just do pastry. So please, let's try to call. You could call and say for a month at a time if you want. So guess what? The Temple Transportation Program is back. We provide no-cost Lyft rides to and from TBE for services and for any program at TBE, so spread the word. Contact either Jack Sikowski, Ken Levin, or Barry Klatsker for details on the program. By the way, Ken, happy anniversary to you and Nancy. It's triple high. Hope you have many more happy years together. And the Levies aren't here, but today is their anniversary. So we want to wish them a happy anniversary in case they're watching. And just to remind you that now we are having live services, although we will still be live streaming. In order to have a minion, you have to be here in person. Masks are required at services and at all temple functions, so I want to thank everybody for being so good about wearing them. I know it's difficult, but it's to help everybody stay safe. And vaccinations. In anticipation of high holidays, we are asking people to either send a picture or come in and show your vaccination card, because we're keeping a list of all the people who have been vaccinated, so we're going to be checking it at high holiday time. Chauffeur classes, our instructor, Shelley Weisbuck, is here, so if you want to learn how to sound the chauffeur, whether you need to learn, practice, or refresh your skills, their classes are on Thursdays, August 26th and September 2nd, from 6 to 7, right here in the chapel, right? Okay. Can't wait to hear it on Rosh Hashanah. Men's Club Annual Barbecue. Thank goodness we get to have it this year. On Tuesday, this Tuesday, August 24th at 6 p.m., Men's Club will be hosting its annual paid-up membership barbecue in the courtyard of TBE. It's free to paid members, and you can pay your dues at night, and it's open to everybody. We just ask for a $10 donation. After dinner, they're going to have a program of a must-see film called Miracle on the Court, the story of the Maccabi team winning the European Championships, a source of great pride to Israel. So, women and children are welcome. They just have to pay $10. Ooh, Slichot program. Oh, it's coming up quicker than we think. On Saturday, August 28th at 8 p.m., we will have a Slichot program. We will be screening the documentary Karski and the Lords of Humanity. It's a unique blend of archival and documentary footage and a special kind of animation telling the story of Jan Karski, who tried to tell the world about the Shoah. There will be a brief discussion and some refreshments, and then Slichot services to follow. 5782, can you believe that? Calendars are here, and with the September tidings and other flyers right there in the multipurpose room by the door. Honey can still be ordered. It's $13 plus $5.50 per jar for shipping and handling. It's in the tidings, or you can call Becky in the office. I know some of the people I've sent have called and they've received it, and it's really a great fundraiser, and it's fun to get. Well, New Year's greetings went out in the September tidings, but we will be adding more in the October tidings. So if you missed the boat, you could still do it. New ads will be accepted. Just call the office. And this is it. Bakery orders, last day to order this week, August 23rd. Hey, look, we all like to eat bakery goods on Rosh Hashanah, so don't miss the deadline. Call Becky in the office. Now, this is something very serious. Rabbi alluded to it earlier about helping Mary's Kitchen. This is a message from Nancy Levin. Mary's Kitchen is a recipient of volunteer time, cash or gift cards, and food and other donations from Temple Beth Emet congregants and the Mitzvah All Year Long Committee and Fund. As many of you know, the city of Orange is trying to terminate the lease of Mary's Kitchen, which would be 3 years earlier than it's supposed to. Mary's has served the homeless and hungry since 1994 at its present location. Mary serves 150 to 200 people a day, 6 days a week. Mary's provides 3 meals a day, showers, toilets, laundry facilities, clothing, toiletries, and receives and distributes mail for their clients. The City Council recently approved an affordable housing project nearby, which it says is incompatible with Mary's Kitchen. What could they possibly mean by that? I'm asking you to help save Mary's Kitchen by writing emails, letters, and or calling Orange City officials and the city council members. Let them know that you care about Mary's and support her compassionate mission. Details about how you can help are being sent in a separate email, or you could contact Nancy Levin. The Orange County Jewish Coalition for Refugees is hosting a film festival. The flyers are also in the alcove. Excuse me. Oh my goodness, it goes on. Okay.
And the first film is coincidentally about
Do you want to?
Mary's Kitchen, and are they serving kosher food?
No, we don't serve kosher food because that helps out that it's not kosher food.
Yeah. Do you want to talk any more about it? Because I have a thing, it's called, the film is called Midnight Traveler. It's a gripping verite story made by a family on the run. Hassan and his wife, Fatima, are both filmmakers who are educating their daughters and encouraging them to be artists. The whole family shot this autobiographical film, which began when they sought and were rejected for refugee protection, and follows them along the notorious Balkan smuggling route as they experienced increasingly degrading circumstances. The family latched onto filmmaking as a way to not just survive, but retain their humanity. And you can watch the trailer here. It's being presented August 24th at 4 p.m. Join us on Zoom for an up-to-date minute on the situation on the ground in Afghanistan as the U.S. military is pulling out, and emergency evacuations are underway from 17,000 Afghan allies and their families. Our panelists are Air Force veteran Phil Caruso, board member of No One Left Behind, and Ismail Khan, an Afghan SIV recipient who serves as the No One Left Behind ambassador. They will share the work they are doing around the clock this week to get Afghan allies out of the country and to safety. So you could register for access to Midnight Traveler and the Zoom panel. And I think, wasn't it in one of the emails that was sent out with this information, or?
In addition to that event, the film itself is like a week-long window to see it. So it's already begun, and I think it's through the 26th.
Okay.
Even though that event is on the 24th.
Okay. Now we have another message from Bonnie Wiederman about the Orange County EGAL Minion. Dear OC EGAL Minion participant, this coming Sunday, August 22nd, a number of regular attendees, including her and Neil, Rabbi Marcia and Scott and Jonathan, will not be present at the Minion because of a community klezmer concert and other events. In order to ensure that those saying Kaddish will have a Minion, she would ask that you consider participating in the Minion this Sunday, even if it's not your regular day to join. And please feel free to invite a family member or a friend. As a reminder, the Minion Zoom link and password ID, they have it, I'm not going to read it, the password stuff. So Neil and her will return to the Minion on Monday evening to observe the 13th Yortzeit of her mother, Darlene Seligman, and she hopes that you will join us. So if you're interested, the information is here about the Zoom, and you can't write it down because it's Shabbat, but. It's in the email. Oh, okay, I didn't look at the email. Thank you, Rabbi. Okay, well, so I apologize. I should have had you just speak about it, but, okay. Yes.
My impression is some of the people are not aware of that opinion, so maybe Bonnie can speak to it because it is 5 days a week.
Do you want to?
Yes, just really quickly. So for people who want a weekday davening experience for Mincha and Marty, the Jewish Collaborative of Orange County offers a Zoom minion Sunday night through Thursday night, and right now it's meeting at 6 p.m. for Mincha and Marty. All you have to do is click on the link or use the username, and it's in the email. Or you can ask me about it, we'll figure it out. But anyway, it's a lot of people attend when they need to say Kaddish, and then they're just attend regularly to help make a minion and have a davening experience. It is largely lay-led, so also if you would like to lead services, you're welcome to volunteer to do that. If you have questions, just let me know.
So can you get the link off the Jewish Collaborative website? Or is it on there?
If you go to jewishcollaborativeofoc.org, you can go to a page to sign up for the Minion, and then the link will be sent.
Wonderful. Thanks so much, Bonnie. I want to thank everybody who participated in the service. As always, it makes it a more enriching experience. And I'd like to say Shabbat Shalom. Is there any other announcements that anyone needs to? Thank you.
So what do you say, Zev, page 187?
Let's do it, Rabbi.
Okay.
Adon olam, asher
Malach
malach b'terem kol,
Yitzir
yitzir nivra, v'yignasa v'chefza kol, azai melech shemo nikra, azai melech shemo
Nikra,
v'yacharei
Yiklot
giglot
hakol
levado,
levado,
yimloch
Yimloch
nara,
nara,
v'hu haya, v'hu over, v'hu
Yeh
b'tifara,
b'tifara,
v'hu yeh
b'tifara,
v'hu
v'hu
echad,
v'yen sheni l'ham shelo lahachbira,
v'li reishi,
Shir
v'li
b'li
tachlit,
tachlit,
v'lo ha'oz, v'ha'misra, v'lo ha'oz, v'ha'misra, v'hu Eli, v'chego ali, v'tzorchem li, b'tzara, v'hu nesi, u'manosi, b'nad kosi, b'yom ekra, b'nad kosi, b'yom
B'yom ekra, b'yado, Avkid ruchi v'yet ishan v'ya'ira,
v'yem ruchi, yevi'ati,
Adonai li v'lo ira,
Adonai li
v'lo
v'lo
ira.
ira. Shabbat shalom.
Shabbat shalom.